Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hello, thank you for clicking on this video, and if you're not new here, thank you for coming back. In today's video I'm going to be doing reading wrap-ups, yes, plural, for 2 months. I'm going to be doing January and February because, as you guys know, I'm now doing bi-monthly instead of like every single month, because I just feel like it's easier to just do it all, you know, do it 2 months instead of having one every single month. I feel like it gets a little bit repetitive and it allows me to do more things for you guys. Oh, and like over the 2 months I read 17 books, which is crazy. 9 in January and then I read 8 in February, which is crazy. I'm having really good, like reading wise, like the amount of books I'm reading, I'm doing really good. Now you'll see within these books there are definitely some misses throughout the books that I've read, but overall I think these 2 months were really very good reading months. But both TBRs I did not read 2 of the books on those TBRs and read 2 books that weren't on those TBRs. So we're gonna go through that first. So in January I put 9 books on my TBR. I read 7 of those books and 2 like just other books, and 2 of them I didn't read, and the 2 that were on the TBR that I didn't read was Butcher and Blackbird and Blue Sisters. I just didn't feel like it. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I didn't feel like it. Also, for like the very like first 2 weeks of January I don't think I read anything. So because I was sick the first 2 weeks of January. I was sick, so there was nothing being read, so there's that. And then in February I didn't read 2 of the books, and I put 8 books on my TBR that time and I didn't read 2 of them, and I read 6 of them. And then the 2 that I didn't read was The Assassin's Blade and First Time Caller. I wanted to read First Time Caller so bad. I did start it, I just didn't finish it. And then The Assassin's Blade, I said in that video I was not reading that book. I'm not starting another series, and I'm not starting another Sarah J. Maas series, and I'm going to explain to you right now why, so you guys don't kill me. But it's because I read Akhtar, and you will see that in this video. I read that in January and I wasn't the biggest fan of it, so I'm still trying to decide if I want to finish that series, and I just feel like I need to read another one of her books in that series to determine if I want to read Throne of Glass and continue on with more Sarah J. Maas books. So there's that. If you guys think I should still read it, let me know. But as of right now, I'm just not that interested in reading it. So there's the explanations of why there were 2 books on both TBRs that I didn't read. Now we will get on to the books that I actually did read, because we have a lot of books to go through this video. First book I read is a book that I do not own because it was only on Kindle Unlimited, I'm pretty sure, and it was a short story by Frederick Bachman, and it was called The Answer Is No. Yes, it was called The Answer Is No, and I'm sure I gave this a 5-star because it is Frederick Bachman, and I give everything that man writes a 5-star. Honestly, I don't remember much. It was very short, and I read this literally at the beginning of the year. I finished it on the 11th, and I just know that this story was about this man who doesn't really like people. He is not a people person. He tends to want to be alone. He's very much a introvert, a loner. And in this story, there is a piece of trash that is left out, or it's a pan that is left on the sidewalk, and he kind of gets roped into dealing with his neighbors and kind of learning how to say no, but also not say no, and then allow people to be let in to his life. I always rate Frederick Bachman's things a 5-star, even if they are like short stories, just because I feel like I learn something every single time, or I relate to the characters. In this case, I feel like I learned something, but also I felt like I related to Lucas so much, and yeah, it was a 5-star, and I loved it, and it was great, and Frederick Bachman wrote it, so no one should be surprised. The next book I read was All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I finished this in January, but I started this in December. Actually, majority of it was read in December, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really remember, but I am going to say this right now. I think that this is one of my favorite Mariana Zapata books. I feel like The Wall of Winnipeg and Me is always going to be top for me, but this is definitely a close second. This one was very, not as deep as some of her other books, but it is the only book that I've read by her that does not have a sports element to it, and I really enjoyed it. I think that our main character was very relatable, and I think that, I've said this before, I love a single father trope. Single father, single mother, single parent trope, and this was that, and I really enjoyed it. And I loved seeing the relationship between Rode and his son Amos. I don't know how we pronounce that, but I loved seeing the relationship between them. And then also Aurora, our main character, also has a lot going on. She lost her mother, and then also she is going through some relationship problems, which is kind of deep when you kind of read the book and figure out what those problems are. So there's a lot going on in this book, as there is in all Mariana Zapata books. And yeah, this was a 5-star for me. The next book I read was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I did not rate this. This is a memoir, so I do not write memoirs. I think that it is kind of insensitive to rate someone's story. So this has no rating. This is just in nonfiction. But I really did enjoy this. This talks a lot about her relationship with her mother and with her father, and also her trying to like find her identity as a Korean American. It's deep, especially because there's also mentions of death and sickness in this story. So if you cannot handle that, maybe don't read this. But I think that is very valuable, because you kind of you see how many dynamics and how a relationship within your family changes how they kind of act with you, and how you feel about yourself changes how you act with different people. Really good. I think that if you are okay with the topics that are talked about in this book, you should read it. The next book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I originally gave this book a 3.75, but as I'm thinking about it, I feel like that's a little bit too high, and I think I'm going to lower it to a 3.5, possibly even a 3. I don't know. Right now, we're going to say 3.5. I was not crazy about this. I started off trying to listen to it while reading it. Did not like the audiobook. But then also just like reading it, I just, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I'm going to say that. There was a lot of things that didn't really make sense to me. I just wasn't a fan. I'm not a fan of our main character. I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of really anything in this. The ending, like the little like games she had to go through, that was interesting to me. But I also had to wait, like, how many pages is this book? 400 and something? Like, I feel like I had to wait like at least 250 pages to get to that. And I, like, me personally, I do not want to have to sit through a lot just to get to the good part of a book, or I don't have to want to read a bunch of books to get to the good part of a series. Like, that's just not something that I want to spend my time doing. The writing style was pretty easy. I don't necessarily agree with people when they say that this book is as smutty as they say it is. I don't think it was that much, but the parts that there were was a little bit cringy. I'm gonna say that. That's all I have to say about this. I don't know if I'm gonna continue the series. I know people say that it gets better, but I don't know. We'll see. That's all I have to say about that. Next, I read Percy Jackson Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. I give this a 4-star, and I'm gonna stick with that. This was my childhood. I loved Percy Jackson. I still love Percy Jackson. This was so easy to read. If anyone doesn't know what Percy Jackson is, I'm sure you do. There's this kid. He is in middle school. Also, for some reason, like, because I've watched the movies and I've read the books, I'm now like putting in my brain, like, they don't really match up, because he is supposed to be like 12, like in 6th grade or something, and in the movies you do not get that. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks like that, but I don't get that. Either way, besides the point, I have always thought that the movies were good, but the books just provide so much more, and I still feel that way. But it was nice to revisit this and go back and read this. I did listen to this for the most part because I was reading it while I was at work. It was just something quick and easy, and it was just that. I have always loved Percy Jackson and the story of Percy Jackson, and being able to be back with these characters, with Percy and Grover and Annabeth, really just warmed my heart. So this was a 4-star. This was a reread, but it was a good reread. The next book I have is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I gave this a 4-star as well. I am excited to continue this series because for the most part I really liked this book. This book did get real smutty, and I also feel like this book was way too long. I feel like we definitely could have like cut some things out of this, but I did enjoy seeing like the actual like behind the scenes of like this amusement park that our main character Rowan owns. Was really interesting to see. I liked our main characters. There's really nothing much. The writing style was easy. It was just that, I don't know, I felt like it was too long. We definitely could have shortened it, and it just didn't give me the 5-star feels, and that is perfectly fine. But yeah, I do see why this gets so much hype. I do. Next, we have our first kind of like, oh, that's not true. I was about to say we have our first kind of disappointment, and that's not true because ACOTAR was definitely a bit of a disappointment for me, but we have Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. What did I rate this? 2.5. I did not like this at all. I felt like this was so boring. I'm not gonna lie, I felt like this was so boring. There wasn't much going on, and I felt like it really didn't make any sense. And the ending made me upset because, like, I don't know. I just really didn't like this, and I wanted to like this so much. I was so excited to read this book, and I don't know, it just didn't give anything that it was supposed to give. And I feel like nowadays I'm very much picky with how I rate my horrors and thrillers, because I do read a lot of them, and I think that is probably my favorite genre. So I'm really picky, and this one just didn't do it for me. And I know that Paul Tremblay is a very well loved author when it comes to like the horror and thriller, but this one just didn't do it for me. I was so unbelievably bored. So if y'all want to read this, y'all can try it. I don't know, the premise was just so good. Like, I don't know, I was disappointed personally. Next book we read was Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. And reading this, okay, I'm not gonna lie, first of all, sprayed out just because we talk about it, beautiful, but I'm not gonna lie, I gave Iron Flame, yes, a 5-star, and that's not a 5-star. I'm gonna say that now because I lied. When I said it was a 5-star, it's not a 5-star. I feel like I was just like really feeling it. It's not a 5-star. I feel like at most it's a 4.5, because that was definitely a filler book, and it was too much spice in that book. I feel like we got so much. It was definitely a filler book, and I feel like we did not get as much action. We got a lot of romance. And that's fine. Like, that's fine as long as we get, like, the action was literally like the last 100 pages. Why? That was like a 600 page book, and the last 100 pages was action. The other 500 pages, romance. So that is my least favorite of the series. I just felt like we kind of like lost the plot there. This one is a true 5-star. I loved this book. There was so much like tension between our characters, but also there was a lot of like actual fantastical things going on. Like, there was a lot going on. We learned more about Andarna. I don't know, I really just love this. The ending. One thing I will tell you about Miss Rebecca, she knows how to do a cliffhanger ending. She knows how to do that. And I feel like after reading this, I feel like it makes a lot of sense why I rated the next book that I read after this it makes sense, because this was a 5-star and I was very much left like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, what am I supposed to do now? What the heck happened to Zayden? What the heck is going on there? What is Violet gonna do? What is going on? Like, that's how I felt after reading this book. And if you could make me feel like so confused, you could make me like just stare at a wall after I read a book, you're doing something. You're doing something. And she did that with this book. I feel like this book just gave me everything that I needed, especially after how the second book ended. I feel like I got what I needed and was left wanting more in a good way. So I am still thinking about this book to the day, and I need the 4th one like now. So that was a 5-star. Was very happy reading that. And then I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I gave this a 3.5, and I think I'm gonna lower to a 3. It's just a 3. Hear me out. Hear me out. I was really excited to read this book. I said that in the video. Like, I was so excited to read this book. I've been wanting to read this book for so long. I feel like, I don't know who the general audience for her books are, but I felt like she was definitely, like, it's not mansplaining because R.F. Kuang is a woman, but I felt like I was like being taught things that I didn't need to be taught. Like, she was like over explaining things that didn't need to be over explained, and I just felt like she thought I was dumb, and I'm not. I like to think I'm pretty smart. So that like turned me off of the book, because I'm just like, you're explaining a lot of things that don't need to be explained, that are pretty self-explanatory, and that turned me off. And I feel like the writing was weird for me, and that's a weird thing for me to say. I'm usually not a type of person who has problems with writing styles. I can usually read everything and be okay, like adapt to it. For some reason, this writing style, it like made my head hurt, and I don't understand what it is. And I want to read more of her books, but I feel like her other books are just going to confuse me even more, because this confused me at times, but I felt like my confusion was because she was over explaining things. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I don't know. But we do get a lot of information about the publishing, like, what is it? Publishing world and all of that. So that was interesting to see. The twist at the end was, I don't know. I saw it coming, but I was also just like, what the heck is going on? Like, what is happening? But yeah, this was a 3. I was not blown away like I thought I was gonna be. Maybe I'll try more of her books. I just don't know yet. It's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time. So those were all the books that I read in January. Now we're on to our February books. My February books were significantly smaller than my January books, but for the most part, I loved all of them, except for one. I think there was one that I was like, about, but all the other ones I really enjoyed. And we're starting off with Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did. I gave this book a 5-star. Isn't that crazy? That's insane. I gave this book a 5-star, and I wasn't expecting to rate it that high. I was like, okay, a 4 maybe. No, this was a 5. This was so good. I rate things highly if I feel connected to them, and I feel very connected to Annie. And I know a lot of people didn't like Annie because they thought Annie was like childish. I don't know what that says about me. I don't think I am, but people said that Annie was childish, she was annoying. I loved her. I loved her because I am her. Me and her are the same person, basically. And Will, I understood Will. This was deep. Will's, especially with Will's problems, I really enjoyed it. And it's family. It's because it was a family dynamic, and his problems had a lot to do with how his parents treated him and how his parents' relationship were. It was very deep, and we got into that, and I enjoyed that. It was really good. But also the romance was just cute. I don't know, I really liked it. I was over here smiling and laughing and angry. I felt so many emotions reading this book. This wasn't a reading vlog though, so if you want to hear like my in-depth like reasonings and stuff, watch that. I was in my romance reading vlog, posted 2 videos ago, something like that. We'll see, I don't know. Next book I read was This Time It's Real by Anne Liang. I gave this book a 3-star. I thought I was gonna love this book. I did, but honestly now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know why I thought I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why I thought I was gonna love this book as much as I did, because I am not that big of a fan of YA romances. I could read YA anything else. YA romances are really just like, no. And it's solely because of the female main characters and because I see myself too much in them, and I'm like, that's not something I want to think about. And that is how I felt with this book. That's how I felt, because I see myself so much in Eliza and the decisions that she was making. I was like, girl, I would have done the same thing, and that's embarrassing, because now as like a 20-year-old, I'm like, that is so childish. Why would you do that? So that's probably why I didn't like this book. But I did like seeing everything with like the C-dramas, Chinese dramas, and then also like I really liked our main character. What was his name? Kaz? I really liked Kaz. So yeah, and the romance was cute for what it was. It was just, I saw myself a little bit too much in the 16-year-old character, and I was not a fan of that. Next book was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. This was a 5-star. No one's surprised. I cried. I now know what people mean when they say that this book is a super sad book. Like, before I read this, I was like, there's no way that a book that is like 67 pages could make me cry. Like, it's 67 pages. There's no way. There's a way. Because in this book, we are following this grandpa and his grandson. And this grandpa is literally, quite literally, on his deathbed. And it is the saddest thing I have ever, like, seen. Because like, we are kind of like watching this old man like die, and like it's really sad, and we're seeing it from his point of view but also his grandson's point of view. And I don't know, the ending got me. I highlighted it, let me see, because y'all, he said, Noah, promise me something, one very last thing. Once your goodbye is perfect, you have to leave me and not look back. Live your life. It's an awful thing to miss someone who's still here. What? What? What do you mean? Like, that's so sad. This book was really sad. And now, like, reading it, you kind of understand why the book is named what it is named, because I'm not gonna tell you. I would say read it. It's gonna make you cry, but like, read it. But I mean, the book has death in it, so like, I feel like that's gonna make anyone cry. But it really got to me for whatever reason. It really hit me in a way that I didn't expect it to. So that was a 5-star. The next book was a little bit happier, and that was From Look Off with Love by Mariana Zapata. This is still a 4.75, and I truly believe that this will end up being a 5-star, and Culty will end up going down a little bit, only because I enjoyed this way more than I enjoyed Culty. But I feel like I need to reread that to like really like make sure that I like this more. But like off the top of my head, like I think I like this more. I think I do. All of her books I keep saying this, all of her books are deeper. They kind of like go through a deeper issue, and this issue we have with Vanessa. Not Vanessa. Who was Vanessa? Vanessa was in The Wall of Unpegamy. Jasmine is, she's a figure skater, and she has this kind of situation with her father. I don't know what it is about Mariana Zapata and her making her characters have daddy issues, but I'm not a fan. It's hitting a little bit too close to home, and I would like it if you would stop. Thank you. But because of those storylines, I think I relate to it a little bit more. And this storyline, not so much, because it's just kind of like her father not supporting what she's doing, but there's a lot of miscommunication within that. And Lukov. I feel like there was a lot of missing pieces within Lukov. I feel like we don't really know anything about him, and that's why I feel like I can't rate this 5-star, because we quite literally know nothing about Lukov at all. Like, we hear about his sister. For one, we never met his sister. We met his family, like his parents, twice. Like, I know more about his pets than I do about his mom. That's insane. So there's just a lot of holes there, but I do think the relationship was very believable. I think it was believable, and I think it was a cute romance, and it was a romance that you would see in real life, and not something that's so like out of the box and out of the ordinary. That's what I like about her romances. This book, I feel like in all Mariana Zapata books, I feel like she could shave a little bit off. This was the one where I felt like everything that was in this book was something that needed to be in this book. So, not 5 stars, 4.75. Maybe it'll be a 5. I don't know. I really don't know. We'll see. The next 3 books I read for a video as well. The other 3 that I just talked about were all my romance reading vlogs, so those are all talked about in depth. And the next 3 books will also, they were in a reading vlog. The last video you saw, no, 2 videos ago. So these were also talked about in depth in those videos, and that first one was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I give this book a 4.25. Yes. And the reason why, I feel like I'm kind of just repeating myself, because I finished that book. I mean, I finished that like a week ago, so it's not new. This book talks about a lot of heavy topics. It talks about children. It talks about children and their family. It talks about young pregnancy. It talks about exploitation. That's what I'm gonna say it is. It's something different, but I would not like to say that. There's a lot of heavier topics in this book, which, I mean, I was kind of expecting, but I was definitely expecting this more to be just like a book about social issues instead of like what it was. But with that being said, it was really good. The writing was really easy. The story was really good. It was just that it just didn't give me the 5-star feels, and I also just wasn't, I feel like I wasn't as connected to these characters in this book as I was in like the next 2 books you'll see. I just wasn't as connected, but it was a 4.25. I enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that I read this book, because now I know that I want to read more of Toni Morrison's books, and I've also been just wanting to read this for a very long time. So yeah, the next book I read was Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This book was really good. This book is like 100 and something pages, 130 something, maybe 140. This one was really good. I don't understand how books that are so small like this could really like make me connect to characters as much as I do, and like care for them as much as I do. I feel like I learned so much about like the characters in this book. Our main characters are David and then Giovanni, and then we also have, I forgot her name, Hella. So we have Giovanni, David, and Hella, who are kind of like our 3 like main characters, because they're the characters that we are like circling around. Mostly David. David, 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 David needs to get his stuff together. That's what I need to say. He needs to get it together, because in this story, he doesn't know what he wants to do. And in turn, he is dragging everyone down with him. David is kind of exploring his sexuality. Mind you, this book was published in like the 1956. So I feel like that was still like kind of like a scandalous thing to write about back then. But Giovanni is kind of like exploring his sexuality. He did when he was younger, and then he was kind of like, this is scary, I'm not doing that. But then he did it again when his fiance like went abroad. I don't remember where she went, but she went abroad, and he was in Paris, and he was hanging out with his friend, and he saw Giovanni. And my thing is, David, this teaches you a lot about your emotions, and how if you don't address them, they will address themselves for you, and they will blow up in your face, and they will in turn affect every single other person in your life. Because he could not be honest with himself, was in turn not being honest with anyone else in his life, and that blew up in his face, literally. So yeah, I don't know, I have very strong feelings when it comes to this book. Why? I don't know, I just do. So I really enjoyed this. This was a 4.5. I would recommend this book. I really liked it. I'm very passionate about it, as you can see. The Neighbor Favor by Christina Flores was the next book I read. This book I gave a 4.5. I really like this. I loved the little email aspect of it, which was like the first like 60 pages. Loved that. I love mixed media in books, whether it's text messages, Instagram posts, emails. I'm gonna eat it up every time, and I sure did. This book, I really enjoyed it because it was very much like Black excellence, you know? It was very much Black excellence and Black people, and I loved that. Seeing people who are like me in books like this. So this book, we are following, what's her name? Lily and Nick. I love Nick. I loved diving into Nick's issues because he has a lot of familial issues. Do we see a theme in the books that I read? I think we do. He has a lot of familial issues, and that kind of like definitely transfers onto him and how he sees himself and deals with like his accomplishments that he doesn't think are accomplishments. Like, he's very mean to himself, he's very hard on himself, he has very low standards for himself, but like in a bad way. Not like low standards like, oh, like this is low because I could do this. He has low standards because he's like, oh, if it's this low, I won't mess it up. Like, do you get what I mean? Like, he's really mean to himself, and I hated seeing that because of how his parents and that relationship was and what they were doing when he was living with them. And then on the other side, we have a Lily who is an editor. She wants to be a children's book editor, but she's doing nonfiction editing, and she's kind of like in a rut. Like, she's not getting paid a lot. She kind of hates her job. She hates her manager, like her boss. Like, she's in a rut, and her family is kind of like, because her family, one is like, I think she's a lawyer, the other one is like a costume, like a stylist, and then her parents are very much like successful, and they're kind of pressuring her to like find this love and then find a job that pays more, even though she wouldn't be happy. So there's a lot of family dynamics within this book. And then we also have the fact that he ghosted her, and she doesn't know that. She doesn't know that. We know that because it's on the back of the book, but she doesn't know that. So that's a whole nother layer added to this, because she kind of sucks at romance, and he ghosted her. So yeah, there's a lot going on in here, but I loved it. She has a cat. He was cute. I would have preferred a dog, but a cat will do. I'm an animal girl through and through, so it doesn't really matter what animal it is. If there's an animal, I'm sad. I'm sat and curled up under my blankets. Like I'm okay. But also the backdrop of this is New York. I love a New York backdrop. Probably because I don't live there. I love a New York City backdrop. So that was nice to see. What else do I have to say? Oh, this is a book about bookish people. I know as readers we love books about bookish people, and this is one that I feel like anyone would love because he's a writer, she's an editor, they're both readers. That should be enough. 4.5. Loved. The last book I read in February was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm not gonna lie, out of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, I thought that this was gonna be like kind of like lower on my list, but y'all, this was really good actually. I rated this book a 4.5. This book, I had such a hard time, even still now I'm having a hard time deciding if that's gonna be my final rating, because this could definitely go up. I really liked this. Every time I read this book, I was so into it, not wanting to put the book down. But there were so many parts of this, like the characters in this story, I have a hard time saying how I feel about them and judging them, because I feel like, I mean, y'all saw how I was talking about some of these books. I'm not new to judging, okay? I can judge. I can judge, and I do. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a judger sometimes. And I just had a hard time doing that with this book just because of what this book is. This book is a book about grief. Like, I'm just gonna blanket statement that. It is a book about grief. In this book, we have Emma, who was married to Jesse. And on their 1-year anniversary, he goes missing. He went on a helicopter, the helicopter went down, and his body was never found. So they assumed he was dead. And then she kind of moves on, and she gets engaged to Sam. And then Jesse comes back. And that in its own is so bizarre to me, because like I couldn't even like imagine myself in that situation, because I'm just like, that would never happen. But it happened, and there's just so many emotions being felt. And with this, because it's a love triangle, but this was the one love triangle that didn't stress me out, because she has very real feelings for both of these men. She was married to one, she's engaged to the other. She has very real feelings for both these men. So I was never going to be upset, and it was never going to change my rating depending on which man she got with. Like, that was never like a main thing in my mind. I was more focused on their emotions and what they were feeling. Now, there was times where I did not like some of these characters. Actually, I will say, I never disliked Sam. Loved that man throughout the entire story. Jesse, there was times where I was just like, he's doing a lot, but also like, he was missing for 3 years. Like, I'm not gonna tell you how. He was missing for 3 years. So he's going through a lot. He kind of expected to come home and everything be the same. But realistically, that is not what happened. And so he was saying a lot of things that just in like a regular situation would definitely be like a red flag. Like, you need to calm down, slow your roll. But like I was saying, I was just having a hard time kind of like judging him for that, because the situation is so unique. You know, it was so hard to kind of like make an opinion on the book because of the situation and what these characters were going through. I don't know, but I loved the book, and I loved kind of seeing the different reactions to the situation, because we have 3 very different like points of views in this book, and 3 very different sides of this, or not sides of the story, but 3 different like perceptions of what is going on. We have Sam, who is her fiance. We have Emma, who is now split between these 2 men, and then we have Jesse. And I'm just like, there's so much going on. There's so much things being felt, and I don't know, it was really crazy. But it shows you how different grief is for different people, how different people need to do different things, see different things, experience other things in order to kind of like grieve what they've lost or think they've lost, and also how like losing someone makes you kind of like figure out and forces you to be who you aren't meant to be. Because I think it is common for people to be like, oh, that's my ex, hate them, we're gonna forget about them. And I don't think that's healthy, because you wouldn't be the person that you are if you never had these experiences with that one person. I've had situations with people in my past, and while those situations aren't necessarily desirable, not things that I would ever want to go through again, they are things that I did experience and have made me the person that I am, and I like the person that I am for the most part. So I think this teaches you a lot about grief and a lot about love in general and what you should give and take from it. 4.5. So those are the, how much was that? 17. The 17 books that I read in January and February. And I think overall this was great reading months. I read so many books and so many good books. And if you guys have read any of these books, let me know how you felt about them. Did you like them? Did you love them? Should I continue reading Akhtar? Should I read more of Arquan's books? Should I read more of Paul Tremblay's books? Let me know, because I'm conflicted and I need some guidance. So please. But yeah, that is the end of this video, and I will see you guys on Tuesday, actually. Actually, no, I won't. I'll either see you on Friday or Tuesday. I don't remember my posting schedule, but you will see.